I'm the chairman of the Planning and Zoning Commission. I call this public hearing to order. Will the clerk please call the roll? It is 7 o'clock on the nose.
Anselmo Delia,
Here.
Alan Kravitz, Michael Rossi, Pamela Fritz,
Here.
Timothy Guerra,
Here.
Dennis Armstrong,
Here.
Lisa McDonald,
Here.
John Main,
Here.
Cynthia Watts,
Here.
Maurice Kirk Carr,
Present.
Christine Goupil,
Here.
Mark Rapuano.
Here. Okay, I can see 2, right?
Yes.
Christine for Alan. And Mark for
Mike.
Mike. Okay. Okay. Who's going to be the secretary? You're the secretary for the time being, Dennis. If you would read the legal notice.
Planning and Zoning Commission, Victoria's Main Street, Clinton, Connecticut, legal notice of public hearing, October 7, 2013, 7 p.m. Green Room. Clinton Planning and Zoning Commission will hold a public hearing on Monday, October 7, 2013, at 7 p.m. Green Room, Andrews Memorial Town Hall, 54 East Main Street, Clinton, Connecticut, to consider the following. 1. AR 13-104, petition to amend zoning regulations and zone map. John D. Watts, trustee, amendment to section 15-1, village zone, statement of purpose, change in zoning designation, several properties from village zone BZ to B4 zone. Number 2, SC 13-170, 235 East Main Street, Edward and Lisa Alberino, modification of special exception. Number 12-038, to allow signage for tattoo use, map 78, lot 68, lot 12, zone B-4. As said, hearing, all persons will have the right to be heard and written communication received. The application and accompanying maps are available for public inspection in the Land Use Office, the Andrews Memorial Town Hall, Clinton Planning and Zoning Commission, and Anselmo Delia, Chairman. Email was sent to the Harvard News here 2 times, Thursday, September 26, 2013, and Thursday, October 3rd, 2013.
Okay, the first item on the agenda is AR 13-104, petition to amend zoning regulations and zone map. John D. Watts, trustee. Is there any correspondence?
I need to recuse myself.
Okay. Let the record reflect that Cynthia Watts has recused herself.
Correspondence number 1, received through October 7, 2013, June 10, 2013, review letter, June 10, 2013, email from John D. Watts, September 17, 2013, letter from Christopher Rod, SCR, SCOG, December 4, 2013, letter from Carol Szymanski, DEEP/OLI SP.
Is there an applicant or agent? Mr. Watts, would you like to make a presentation?
The application speaks for itself, what I've written in the application. Basically, the zoning regulations talked about the village zone being east from the Indian River to 145, and it's trying to keep the consistency of what's going on there with the words compared to the map. I know the map is colored through Beach Park Road, and what we're trying to do is keep the end of the zone that has been designated village zone by the map more consistent with what the words have to say. We went through Board of Zoning Appeals, and it was suggested in their minutes, which are attached to my application. Mark Richards indicated that we should try working through planning and zoning to see if we can make that change. I've also talked to Bill Dunn, I've known for years, probably since the 1970s, met with him, and he has no objection. I spoke to the fellow that owns the Ortega restaurant, McManus, and he has no objection. He'd like to see that passed as well. There is an amended map that I provided a few weeks ago to the town that carved out the property for Park, which is done in Anderson, and it has carved out, and you have that in front of you, I believe. So those are the two reasons: consistency with the wording of the zoning regulations. The people that are being affected have no objection on the end of the zone. And it was suggested by the Board of Appeals that I should try to make this change.
Okay. The way I'm going to conduct the hearing tonight is I am going to have anyone that's in favor of the application stand up, give us their name and address, and then address the full commission. In following that, we are going to have anyone that's opposed to the application to also do the same thing. I will then allow for general comments. If there are general comments, subsequent to that, we are going to have questions and comments from the commission itself. And finally, we would have a rebuttal from the applicant himself if he chooses to do so. So that's the order of business, and that's how we're going to conduct the hearing. I would ask that those that have comments either in favor or against to make new points. Let's not have a lot of cumulative same information over and over again. It doesn't have much effect. This is an evidentiary hearing, and as such, we're willing to listen to evidence, and what you have to say, in essence, constitutes evidence. So if you have the same thing over and over again, it's like hearing the same evidence over and over again. And that's the reason for it. And I think that it also allows for a smoother flow for the hearing. So,
Mr. Chairman,
yes, ma'am.
before we begin, I would like to bring it to the commission's attention that it was brought to my attention that a member of this commission spoke to someone involved in a property owner that is adjacent to the property that is owned by Mr. Watts, and spoke to him in connection with the zone change. And I think that that person should leave the room for these discussions.
Well, I think you have to tell us who you would like to have recused before I can leave. I can have that person do so if he or she chooses to do so.
Well, I would like to think that that person would be good enough to step up on their own, and I'm going to count to 10.
Well, I don't want to play games.
And seeing
We
that
have
he
very
did,
serious business
seeing that he
before us.
did not, I would ask Mr. Carr to move the room. I think it's inappropriate that he attend a meeting. It's almost, if this were a criminal court, as an attorney you would know, that would be witness tampering.
Well, it's more akin to a civil court because the
Still witness
evidentiary
tampering.
rules, but
It's inappropriate.
the point is, you requested that a certain member recuse himself. That
Based on
member,
inappropriate behavior.
the member is not seated, but he is in attendance.
He's not, he's not seated,
For the
but
sake of fairness, I don't want to belabor this, Lisa, okay? For the sake of fairness, I'm going to let Mr. Carr address that challenge in any way he wishes.
I will stipulate the fact that I did bring the application to Mr. Dunn's attention. And I felt it was appropriate that people who were involved in this, that they should be aware of it. That's the extent of my conversation.
but you did that outside the commission. You didn't go to the chairman, you didn't go to the staff.
And you didn't ask the chairman to do so, or
I'm sorry?
you didn't notify the chair that you were going to
I
approach
did
an
not.
applicant before?
I did not.
Outside, prior to a public hearing?
That's correct.
Isn't that inappropriate?
I don't think so.
Excuse me, he did not approach an applicant, so let's get that straight.
Let's.
I'm sorry, this is the commission
Let's-
talking.
I'm
right
sorry,
now.
but if this were a court of law, you'd be in jail.
Mr. Chairman?
I understand your point of view. I disagree with it. I respectfully refuse.
I'm going to speak. You've challenged a member and you've raised your issues. The member has made a statement, the member is not seated. The member, I assume based upon his comments, is choosing not to recuse himself. As far as
I
I'm
didn't
concerned-
expect anything else.
As far
I
as
just
I'm
wanted to go on
concerned,
the record.
let me speak. I still hold the chair. As far as I'm concerned, the matter is resolved for this evening. If you want to address it in some other fashion at a later point, you may do so. It's entirely up to you. All I can say is I cannot make one single member of this commission recused themselves, even after a challenge.
I understand.
If the challenge is serious enough, the member will have to consider it. Other than that, I would like to proceed with this hearing. Is that
And I
okay?
respect, may make one more comment, please. I would just ask then that the chair, when there's a vote, if Mr. Carr continues to sit in the room, poll all members as to whether his presence in the room has affected or influenced their vote at all.
The vote will not take place tonight.
I understand.
So at such point, I will do so.
Thank you. I'm satisfied.
May I proceed?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Anyone in favor of this application who wishes to speak, please approach, state their name and address.
Excuse me. Now that I know the procedure, may I add one more thing? This application I have makes no change of the approved application for my property at all. Incidentally, it has no effect on what has been approved by the commission in the past. I was just going to add that in there, if nothing else.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Anyone in favor of this application who wishes to make comment or introduce any kind of evidence?
I'm just asking for clarification. Could you clarify what the difference is between one zoning and the zone and the others so that we are more informed?
Well, the
Listeners.
current zone pertaining to that property is village zone, village district. The zone that he is seeking, the applicant is seeking to change it to, is a business form. There are certain, and I don't have them right at the top of my head, but there are certain height requirements. I think perhaps the clerk could review the regulations pertaining to business form.
I can tell you what the changes are, what the difference is.
I mean, there's changes in the whole regulations, depending on what zone it is. I mean, from setbacks to
I understand.
everything. I mean, there's multiple things.
My understanding, the village, it was a business zone initially, and when the village zone came out, the idea was to allow for business, mixed use.
Mr. Watts, could you let us first explain what the changes are?
Okay, the village zone has a smaller lot size. The village zone has a smaller minimum square. The village zone has a smaller lot frontage, a smaller minimum setback. It has a maximum setback from the road, B4 does not. I'm only noting the differences. Wherever it stays the same, I'm not going over. The B4 zone has a higher height restriction. It may be 40 feet where the village zone is 35. You can cover up to 80% of the ground in B4, 60% in the village zone. Maximum floor area as a percent of the lot is 50% in village and 100% in B4. The B4 zone does not allow residential uses. So a lot of those are changed. The maximum footprint for any single building is larger in the B4 zone than it is in the village zone. Would you also like me to go over the uses?
No, that's good. Thank you very much. Peggy just gave me this off. So it just sounds like it's much more lenient and a much more useful parcel of property after it's been converted to a B4.
I have an
Theoretically.
opinion on that, but
Theoretically.
perhaps.
Thank you.
There are some significant changes that will take place. And that's why I had the clerk read it. I didn't want to not be objective in my role, because that's what I have to do. Okay, as we were trying to do, may we have anyone that's in favor of this application rise and state their favorable comments? I'm going to ask again, anyone in favor, please rise and state your favorable comments. For the third time, anyone in favor, please rise and state your favorable comments. Anyone opposed to the application or wishes to speak, please rise and state your comments. I would ask the chief of police to speak.
I'm just going to interject now because you, Mr. Chairman, you really give a spot for somebody who just wanted to make a comment.
Is it a comment or
No,
speaking against?
it's not, I just want to make a comment about, I guess we say it's probably, Mr. Watts probably considered against. Mr. Watts is our neighbor. He's been a good neighbor. I have no problem with him trying to develop his property. I would just add that the only thing I would say is historically, when the police department was constructed, we were held to the historic district. We came and tried to get some change. We came before your board. I don't know who was here back then, but in my limited knowledge of it, we tried to get a different, we wanted to put a different building on that property. We were made the town, you kept us, the town, from using it as anything other than the village district. So that's why the police department's building supposed to look like a barn with a house attached to it. So again, I have no problem. Like you said, he's not a bad neighbor. I would just tell you that our concerns are with a larger footprint. The things we talked about is the traffic, that we share a common driveway. That would be my only concern, would be the increased traffic, if that was allowed to happen.
Thank you, Chief Auditor. Anyone else? Mr. Semino?
Thank you.
State your name.
Vincent Semino, 161 East Main Street. I'd like to point out some of those differences in the, between the two zones, and because I'd like to emphasize some of them. One of them is the maximum footprint of any single building in the village zone is 10,000 square feet. The building that Mr. Watts received approval for approaches that figure. However, if it were converted to a B4 zone, and Mr. Watts is telling you that it wouldn't affect the building that it was approved for, well, that may be true.
Point of order, you keep declaring Mr. Watts and his property and what he plans on doing with it. It's just a zoning change, it's not specific to the person who asked for the change or any future plans for the property, it's a zoning change. Just want to make that clear as a point of interest.
Did you make your comments?
Yes.
and references
Concerning the
without-
zoning change
Yes, I can.
specifically?
The B4 zone would allow the construction of a building of up to 40,000 square feet, or 4 times what is currently allowed. Now, if you can imagine a 40,000 square foot structure on that property, or on any property that is currently being suggested that the zoning be changed for, that's what this would allow. It would also allow up to 80% coverage of that ground area. So you have to picture that as well. 80% of the ground covered. The floor area would go to 100%, and I want to remind the Commission that there was a land swap that took place in this proposed
Also
area.
not apparent to the change in the zoning, not something that I would like to hear this evening, that it's not considered a
And under
zoning
your
change.
standards, Mr. Chairman, you said you didn't want any rehashable applications,
I didn't want what?
rehashable information.
Well, it's an old application, Mr. Semino, so I really think we ought to stick to the difference between the village zone, what a B4 zone would entail, and why, in your opinion, that is an adverse situation to have.
Mr. Chairman, a Clinton Village District Park was proposed within this proposed area that is being proposed to be changed, a zone change. Now, this proposed village zone change, well, I don't understand, Mr. Chairman, why we would not be talking about the history of these properties when in fact they're very relative to this matter and to the applicant.
If it's a history that pertains to the impact of the business 4 zone as opposed to a village zone, that's fine. But if it's a history that talks about the first application, whatever number of years ago it was, came about, I don't think it's pertinent to what we will eventually have to decide, which is whether we have a village zone as it is, or whether we change it to a business 4 zone. It has to be of some relevance to the change requested.
And not.
Your Honor, why wouldn't the applicant, Mr. Chairman, why wouldn't the applicant and the history of the applicant's property?
Well, the assumption is that the application and the history is widely known to the commission. We are not operating in a vacuum. when it comes to that. So to have a rehashing of an old application, I think just belabors, unduly confuses this application for a zone change from village zone to B4.
Well, then Mr. Chairman, I'd like to just continue with this because I do think it's relative, and if you find that it isn't, please disregard it. But there was a Village Gateway Park that was
This is not
proposed.
relevant to this application, and I don't think that we should get delayed with this any
Well,
further.
let me put it to you
And
this.
that's the testimony concerns specifically why the zones are different, without referring to future or past plans on the property. That's not what the application is about. It's about whether or not the merits of
Okay.
changing the zone.
How is it relevant for you to recount a full history of a specific property within this proposed change zone?
Mr. Chairman.
If you could explain that
Yes,
to me.
that's what I'm trying to explain. If I could please do so without interruption, just briefly.
Well, that I
This-
can't prove that.
I understand.
It's also the right of the commission.
Excuse me, and I'll just talk over him too. If he's not gonna allow me to speak, then I'll just talk over him, Mr.
Listen,
Chairman.
I would ask that everybody in this room have the courtesy to allow individuals to make their points, whether they be seated as a commissioner or whether they're members of the audience. And I, for one, would like to extend respect to the members of the audience above all commissioners, because after all, we serve the community. So if you disagree with some of the points that he makes, and you don't find them relevant, and perhaps you don't, that's fine. I can't make you accept them. But at some point, there has to be a fine line drawn between what's relevant and what isn't. And it's not always easy to do. So I'm going to let him speak. If I think he goes too far afield, I reserve the right as the chairman to cut him off. How's that? We don't need any more
As
interruptions.
an elected official, I reserve the right to declare a point of order according to Robert's rules. And I
What's the
will
point
do
of
so if I have a point of order where something is not relevant and I have concerns. I have to raise that with the chair, and it's my charge as an elected official.
And you've
I
done so.
agree that that is what I've done. That is fine. Don't you dare tell me for 1 second as a voice of the people of Clinton that if I have a question or concern as a commission member, that I may not raise it.
You've raised it. I just don't want you to continue to interrupt the speaker when he's trying to make a presentation. You will have your time.
If it's
as I
contrary
will-
to the point of the commission,
Mr.
I'm allowed
May,
to ask.
Mr. May, please. I'm asking you to conduct yourself with some degree of decorum so that we can have a worthwhile public hearing. It's a public hearing. A member of the public has chosen to rise, speak against it, and has chosen to introduce certain information, which may or may not be relevant. You've made a point of order, and I've accepted your point of order. We don't need to continue to interrupt each other because we're not going to do much business. And if that continues, we won't have a hearing. Is that fair?
That's your prerogative, Chairman.
Okay, well, let me exercise that prerogative then, Mr. May. Continue, Mr. Smith.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At the time that a piece of property within this particular proposed zone change the ownership was transferred, part of that consideration for that exchange.
I'm going to interrupt.
Yes.
How is that relevant to whether or not this zone should be changed, or considered changed?
Part of that consideration was a village gateway park, which would thereby be the entrance into the village zone. Okay? By changing the zone, this village gateway park would no longer be in the village zone. It would be in a B4 zone, which, as I just covered, would allow a 40,000 square foot building and all of the other changes in the construction requirements, and would no longer maintain the character of the village zone that this proposed park was supposed to be the gateway into.
Okay, I find that acceptable. If
Thank
you would
you.
just limit it to that, that's fine, but I don't want to have a recounting of how all of this came about, if that's what your intention
No,
is.
that was never my intention, and that's what I wanted to establish, is that this would affect the very same village zone gateway park that was part of the consideration for this exchange of properties.
You're not saying, though, that this commission is bound by that and cannot change the zone if it so wishes for whatever reason?
I am not. What I'm saying is that it would change the very nature of that land. It would change the entrance into the village zone, and it would basically, it would allow construction that is not compatible with that particular area. And as we heard from the chief of police, even the police department was required to abide by the village zone requirements, which only allowed for a building of up to 10,000 square feet, not 40,000. It prevented some design that would have otherwise been allowable, and they were forced to abide by village zone design requirements. And it greatly impacted that piece of property, which part of the land, which is being proposed to be changed, wasn't part of originally. It was all part of that same parcel. So to say that the village district was only supposed to go to 145 can't be true. Because historically we know that even the police station was required to abide by village zone restrictions. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Peggy out the 5 Liberty Street. I just want to say that the village zone was created so that a specific part of town, at least at this point, would have a particular appearance which would give it a small town look. This is why the police department has the building appearance it has, why the building, which is in front of Ace Hardware, has the building appearance it does, like a series of small buildings as opposed to one huge building. And to me, it would just be counterproductive to make the village zone smaller rather than to eventually increase it both towards the west end as possibly further east.
Anyone else? Yes? Mr. Sullivan? Please state your name for the record, even though we don't know.
Phil Seibel, 25 James Vincent Drive. Yeah, I rise to oppose this. I think most of what I would like to say has been said about the police station and what it was forced to do, perhaps extra cost. I am, just for the record, I am a member of the police commission, although I'm not speaking for the police commission. As part of the land swap that was engineered by the first selectman to create this whole mess in the first place, was given an easement to the police driveway. And that's been a continuing concern for the police department, and it will remain so. And I would just ask that if you're even considering granting this application, that you work an arrangement to eliminate that easement. All that property of a 40,000 square foot building, not all, but a lot of traffic emanating from this larger development, trying to go through the police department so they get to the traffic light is potentially going to cause a huge problem and potentially accidents. So that's my rationale for that. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Jan Aiken, 10 River Road in Clinton. I'd just like to point out to the members of the board that you are actually a combined planning and zoning commission. You wear both hats. And in reviewing the comprehensive plan of development for the town, which was adopted, it's very specific in that the recommendations are to not decrease the zone, the village zone, but to increase it, to avoid curb cuts onto major highways for safety reasons, not to create new commercial development if any is proposed, but to reuse, repurpose existing buildings, to keep the center of town the center and not have it spread and sprawl. One of the observations that is contained in the plan says that each time a large development occurs, say the north side of town, it changes the complexion of the town. So I just ask that the commission members keep that in mind. We've got a comprehensive plan of development, and there are numerous references with regard to expanding and keeping what we have. It's our character. It's what Clinton is known for. Thank you.
Anyone else? Yes, sir.
Jeff Gashin, 66 River Road. Wanted to bring into an effect about overpopulating an area. We have an area in the center of our town that we struggle with traffic with every day. The CVS piece of property or the Comcast piece of property where there's so many little tiny shops where people are active in that area. We were struggling trying to get traffic through our town. And once we do get through over the bridge and down past some of the most historic areas, that's how traffic seems to ease up. I would hope that you would take into consideration the impact on traffic of people coming in and out of town to do business with that by allowing maybe other shops or something in that area. I'm not saying I'm opposed to the project, I'm not saying I'm for the project, but I wanted to make sure that we were looking at the exit and entrance of our town for people who are doing business and the traffic flow. When we sit as 58 West Main Street, we watch about 10 o'clock in the afternoon, we watch traffic come to a screeching halt during some of our summer times. And I think the whole idea of what we're trying to do at this point is to try and focus on trying to get traffic to move just a little bit faster through town so people don't have this paranoia about doing business on a Saturday or a Friday in town. And I would hope that you would take a good look at that while you're sitting here going, okay, we're looking for downtown improvements and we're looking to try and get people down to the center of town to do business, and what kind of revitalization is already going to be happening in our next step in the center of town, where I believe we do have some funding that is going to be impacting that area also too. So when you do look at an impact and you say, okay, our traffic is, I think everyone in this room can understand once you get past the PD and it's a very nice smooth traffic that exits in and out of town, how that extra traffic flow or whatever we're going to put in there, what will that do to exit or cause or create other problems for other businesses that can't come into that? I think that we are more than aware of a lot of other impacts that are coming into our community. And I don't think we really want to overpopulate too much, because if we were to take the little stores, Coffee Break and all that other stuff that are in that area, people do frequent that area, and at that point, if we do overpopulate something, we'll create even more of an issue on both ends of town. So I was hoping you would take that into consideration. That was my thank you.
Thank you. That was more in the nature of a general comment, so I'm going to go back and ask, is there anybody in favor, against the application at this point that wants to speak? Opposed to the application that wants to speak? Okay, so I'll open it up to general comments now. If you have general comments, please rise and state your name and address. Make your comments. Yes, sir.
Michael Barnes, 60 Beach Park Road. Just a comment, basically, where is the zoning reg, maybe because I'm not privy on to what you guys are talking about, where the zone line ends and where it starts, but is it written in the regulations that it's to end at 145, or is it not? Because if it is, then that sounds like somebody extended the map a little bit further, because 145 clearly ends in one place, and the place where they're talking about where the zone ends is clearly another place. So if the intention was to stop it at 145, I think his argument is legitimate that it should be approved for a zone change. Whereas if, are you following me there? Is it, so it is stop at 145, and that is written into the zoning regulations, correct? Because I know people mess maps up quite often.
What we have is maps. Zoning maps.
So it's not written specifically that the village zone will end at 145.
Let's look at clerk review the regulation.
The East Main Street corridor from the Indian River east to the intersection with 145 maintains the character and scale of a small New England village. That is the only place that mentions.
So my interpretation of that would be to not, it would stop. I mean, if they wanted it to be to Beach Park Road, they would say to end at Beach Park Road, but they're not. They're specifically stating to end at 145. And with that, it seems that his application has some merit. That's just my opinion.
Any other comments?
I have a question. Rod Kerouac, 7 Bonnie Lane. If the property goes to a different zone, what impact does it have on the park? Is there still going to be a park there as proposed? Maybe the applicant can address that? Can the applicant address that?
Well, the applicant can on his rebuttal if he wishes, but as far as I'm concerned at this moment, I would say it has nothing to do with the park. It's a zoning change.
No, it's just,
How it impacts
I understand.
the legalities of some,
I'm just asking for a clarification because there was a proposal for a park. And I'm wondering whether or not, change or no change, whether there's going to be a park.
frankly, I don't know what the repercussions of any, call it contractual obligation may have been. Once, if it were to change zone, how it would apply.
Okay.
That's not for us to make that decision. We're only seeking to.
Okay, so the applicant, if he chooses, can address that.
If the applicant chooses, can address whatever he wants to address on his.
I would appreciate it if you could address it when you get the chance.
Mr. Kerouac, please do not.
Oh, thank you.
engage in back and forth, okay?
Appreciate that.
Anyone that wants to comment further, general comments? Please
Yeah, I
rise.
just want to know how much, okay, the verbal part says 145, but 145 is only on one side of Route 1. So I didn't know how much the actual maps feed into the definition of the village zone as well. Since Route 145 does not go across Route 1 and then continue. Is the map the definition as well as the
Well,
verbal?
the map designates where the zone is.
Right, exactly.
And I think this, the map itself is a gauge for anyone that wants to do any kind of construction.
Well, that was what I thought, okay, so.
So it's not just simply the wording, it's what the map itself is showing.
That's what I was trying to
Right.
clarify.
That's-
The fact that the map dictates what is the village zone.
That's correct, that's
Okay,
the map.
thank you.
Can the applicant make a general comment now, or that's rebuttal?
I think it's better for the applicant to make his rebuttal comment at the end. How's that? Anybody else wants to make a general comment? Mr. Semina?
I just wanted to clarify that the original maps that went along with the establishment of the village zone shows it on one side of the street going to 145 and on the other side of the street going to Beach Park Road. And this issue has been brought up in the past by the applicant, and it has been settled that it goes to Beach Park Road, which is why he's trying to now change it.
Mr. Chairman, please,
You have another point of order, Mr. Knapp?
point of order. He's referring the applicant as proposing a zone change based on past history of the property. Just point of order.
Anyone else with general comment before I allow the applicant to rebut whatever he chooses to rebut? Okay, I see no one else eager to rise and make any comments, so I will let Mr. Watts, the applicant, address us in any fashion he wants with a rebuttal. Just don't throw anything at us.
Okay. You know, when I started this project, there was contractual obligations made upon part of the town, and I expected certain rights. Use of the police road was one of them. It's right in the minutes of the commission. It's right in the town meeting in the first selectman. If you go back to the annual budgets that we all get from the town, you can look at the minutes, and it's in there.
Mr. Chairman, in fairness, that still has a lot of history to do with the applicant's property and not the nature of the reason that he wishes to modify the zone, or at least addressing specifically the previous testimony where the applicant was asked if it would change the nature or whether or not the park that was involved would be changed in any way, which is a meritorious point considering that it is a change in village zone, and I can understand that, but I believe that this testimony does not relate to the exact change of the zone.
The applicant is allowed a rebuttal, and I think this is the form that Mr. Watts has chosen to make his rebuttal, but he can certainly.
I'm allowed to make the
That's fine. Mr. Watts, please.
You know, and Exhibit C to the application, I was interested to see why the words of the zoning regulations say 145. Because the police department sits in the middle of it. As 145 comes out, it's just to the left of the building when you come out on 145. So I went back to the minutes, and in Exhibit C, which everybody has, it says here, they're talking about coming up with the village zone regulations. And they also talk about, generally in there, about the tenor, what they're supposed to be doing. They're not really trying to change the zone. They're not trying to create an inverse condemnation type of activity. They're rezoning, trying to keep the nature of the properties east of the Indian River to 145. And what the minutes, I'm going to read the minutes here, and they're, if the town would like to take a look, they're in Exhibit C. It says, Mr. Mazzocchi expressed concerns about including the parcels at the easternmost end of the proposed zone. Agrenove and Mannix properties. Those are the old Hungry Lion, I guess the new Maru restaurant, as well as the property which was sold to the town for the development of the police station. And it says the property's owners had requested they not be included in the zone. Mazzocchi did state that he felt the concept is a good one. Barrows advised that the proposed village zones ends at Beach Park Road, as it was a natural break and because the Hungry Lion restaurant exhibited certain characteristics of the proposed zone, i.e. is a restaurant below, residential above, parking to the side, and et cetera. Then it has semicolon, and then it says Argo and Mannix properties therefore are not easternmost properties in the village, proposed village zone. And then it says Miller then amended her motion to approve the proposed section 7A village zone as it would establish boundaries for the town center and adopt special design criteria and regulations for development of the Clinton village area in order to preserve the center as an identifiable unit with regulations that may include smaller front setbacks, sign ordinances, parking behind the buildings, preservation of historic structures, architectural design, and it goes on. It says it was noted that there would be minimal difference in the size of allowed construction between the present zone and the village zone, is what it says here. And Mr. Wagner then amended her second. The roll was taken to determine the eligibility, and the vote was 5 in favor, 2 opposed, and the motion carried. So my reading of this indicates that there was an amended, she amended her motion. So her motion initially talked about Beach Park, then it was amended. But I do understand that as time went on, there was a map that was out there, and that became the village zone, and I did build my property in accordance with the village zone. But I'm not really trying to change the development of my property, not trying to build, what is it, 80,000 square feet or 40, whatever the number is. I don't think, there's a lot of engineering things that go into these developments, there's traffic studies and whatnot. I have no intention on doing that. I'm trying to keep the consistency of the regulations. There are residential properties that have been painted into this. Bill Dunn and Ms. Anderson have been painted into this map as well. I've excluded those properties in my application, and I would like the zone change, not to build something larger, not to change what I've agreed to. And incidentally, the Gateway Park is town property. That's part of what was swapped to the town, and it's up to the town to develop that property.
So that I understand, you're not disputing the impact or the import of the zoning map?
No, I'm not. But what I'm providing the commission with is that there was initial discussions at the time the zone was established. And from my reading of the minutes from November 12th, 1996 is where I read this from.
That's a planning and zoning set of minutes you referred to.
It's Planning and Zoning Commission minutes. And they're attached to my application.
What minutes you're referring to?
Beg your pardon?
I was just wanting to be clear as to what minutes you were referring to.
Yes, page 3 of those minutes. That there was discussion of this, and where the zone should change and whatnot. And the general tenor and nature, again, was not to really change the business nature, because the zone allows business, it allows mixed use, it allows residential. In fact, it allows more in some points than the other zone. I'm not trying to change the zone to expand the development, cause more traffic to the community. My project's approved. I believe it was 5 years with a year of extension left for me to build out the project. But I was trying to get some consistency. In this, it was suggested to me by the Board of Zoning Appeals to go, to do this. Those minutes are in my application as well.
Let me understand, the reason that the zoning board of appeals suggested that you proceed in the fashion you are proceeding is because you were attempting to get a variance on the panels on the roof?
Yeah, that started, correct. We started out with a set of solar panels to make the building green and efficient. As a matter of fact, it was built green, so it's extremely efficient building. And we were trying to save energy, and we came to the zoning office. We asked, with our plans, we asked if we could put the panels up. We were told as long as they don't face the street and they don't move. Okay, so I contracted, the panels were purchased, they were put in a warehouse, the engineering came to the town, came to your commission, and since they were on the side of the building, apparently, even though like I have to have the signs out for the zoning commission noticing, you know, in the front of my property, because the panels on the side, that's considered facing the road from Stop and Shop. However, and that was rejected, and so we ended up coming to the Board of, to the Board of Zoning Appeals, and this was discussed with them, and they suggested that we try to do a zone change.
Is it your understanding that you're prevented from pursuing that avenue once again before planning and zoning? That's the case?
I'm prevented from that.
Did you mean ZBA?
No, I have no, procedurally, I didn't think about anything, other than I'm following what the Board of Zoning Appeals has suggested.
I'm just trying to understand why we're going for a zoning change when you're seeking to put panels on the roof of your building.
Well, I'm also seeking zoning change for what's been written in the zoning regulations and keep some consistency so that in the future, if I have to make some modification or something else comes up, I know what I'm dealing, I know what the regulations are.
I'm not appreciating that point, Mr. Watts, because you know what they are right now. You're in a village zone.
Correct. But I'd like to have myself be in a business zone because I believe it's more in keeping with that end of the town, with the billboard that's across the street, the police station that's next to me, and then the Mexican restaurant on the other side.
Thank you. Do you have any other comments, or I'd like to open it up to the commission? I kind of stepped over the commission. I should have asked first. Members of the commission have any questions or comments?
Yeah, one before, because it makes it consistent with the Shell Station area.
Say that again, can you say that again,
Why,
because I didn't understand.
why is it to P4? Why is the applicant put it to P4?
Why has the
That's what we
applicant
advise.
seek,
Yeah.
why does he seek to have a B4 zone?
There's other business zones,
Right.
smaller, stuff that.
Otherwise it would be spot zone.
Sorry.
Otherwise it would be spot zone if it was changed, because it's the contiguous zone.
Because of the other area was P4. That's what I'm trying to get.
Adjacent, yep.
Existence.
It's not entirely true,
Yeah,
but
I was gonna say.
it's not entirely true. There are some legal issues that pertain to that. We're not going to get into those legal issues tonight, but he could seek to change it to any zone he wishes. It doesn't in and of itself make it spot zone, I can tell you that, okay? It's a decision that we would need to make. To seek to do a B4 as opposed to a B2 or a B3 is a choice that the applicant has made.
I'd be more than willing to accept a B2 or a B3 or a B4.
There are many solutions to the dilemma. The dilemma seems to be, at least on its face, the panels. Correct?
That's part of it, correct.
Any further comments?
The panels would be facing which way? They'd be facing,
There's no applicant for panels, so we'll have them to ask. Gentlemen,
The rate, there's been, no, Mr.
Do you
Mayor,
have an
I
application
disagree.
pending for
It's a
panels?
question. It's a question. It's a question.
It'd be on the side of the building that would be facing towards the Hungry Lion or the Maru or Ortega.
is that east? What is the, is that north, east? What's the?
It's how the sun passes, so it's south, I think it's south easterly.
They're usually on the southern facing portion of the building or roof. All right, if I have no more comments to hear from the commission, I would like to hear a motion.
I move we close the hearing.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed? Abstaining? Okay. Application is closed, public hearing is closed. Thank you. I'm going to proceed to the second item on the agenda. In all the motion, I forgot she was missing an item. Will somebody please go get it? And I want to apologize to the audience if I seemed unduly severe in my approach. I just want to keep things civil and moving forward.
Thank you.
Okay, let the minutes reflect that Cindy Watts has returned to the table. And we shall resume with the second item on the agenda, SC 13170, 235 East Main Street, Edward and Lisa Alberino, modification of special exception to allow signage for the tattoo use. Is there an applicant? First of all, is there any correspondence that has come in since the last time?
The only correspondence in the file was the September 11th, 2013 review letter, which said that there was, the review committee didn't have any comments and found the application to be complete.
Is there an applicant?
Lisa Alberino.
Would you like to address us in some fashion as to what you're intending to do with that application?
Well, the application is just simple. I would like to be able to add the word tattoo to our sign to advertise the business that we have there.
As we did in the previous application, I would like to hear from those in favor of the applicant first, and then followed by anyone opposed, then general comments, then members of the commission, and then a rebuttal if one is necessary and the applicant wishes to make one. So is there anyone here in favor of the application to have us grant a special exception to allow signage to designate the tattoo use? Yes, sir.
I'm Jared. I'm the tattoo artist at Alberino's.
What's your name again?
Jared. Jared Krause. This is my only source of income, and I understand the connotations that go with tattoos, and I understand that, but that's not me. I'm very passionate about what I do, and I'm just trying to make a living. And with the other tattoo shops in the surrounding area, I feel like I'm at a tremendous disadvantage not being able to put up a sign that says tattoos. I'm very clean, I'm very safe, and I think this will help me out a lot just in making a living. So that's all I gotta say. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else in favor of the applicant or the application, to be more specific? Anyone opposed? Anyone opposed? Anyone opposed? Any general comments? Members of the commission, it's all yours. You want to ask any questions or make any comments?
Yeah, I have a question. Is this just using the word tattoo, and is this something you plan to add a sign or on a sign that's already existing?
Just the existing sign, I just want to have the existing sign re-lettered to include the word tattoo.
I want to make a clarification. Presently, you have a sign that says, I believe at the bottom, body art.
Yeah.
So your position is that's not sufficient, and you're going to replace that sign and it's
I'm
going
going
to
to
say...
take that off, and my sign is going to say tattoos.
But right now, that sign that says body art is beneath the Alberino's barber, whatever services. and I
Yeah,
don't
it's kind
recall
of like a
exactly what it
temporary
says.
sign, it's just a flashing sign on the underneath.
And basically, the only reason you're seeking to make this change, after having said that you wouldn't about a year ago or so, is because you feel you have a non-competitive business at the moment.
I think it's a disadvantage, not being able to put a legitimate business advertisement on our sign.
Any other questions, comments? Okay, I would entertain a motion.
I move to close here.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining? Hearing is closed.
Okay, thanks.
I move to close the meeting for this evening.
Got you in, I got in before
Move
you.
to adjourn.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstaining?
Thank you.